Welcome to another one of our webinars. Today's webinar is Modernizing Database Development with Datical and Toad. We're very lucky to be joined by two panelists today, and if we can go to our slides here, very good. We have Robert Reeves, who's the CTO at Datical, and you can read his bio highlights right there. And we also have Daniel Norwood, Director of Product Marketing at Dell, and you can read Daniel's highlights right there as well. That being said, I'd like to now turn things over to Robert, and we can get started. Robert, welcome.
Well, thanks, Alan. I do appreciate it. Guys, this is Robert, and Daniel, why don't you say hello?
Hello, everyone.
And so Daniel and I, we're going to be going back and forth. We are sitting in the same room. We are collaborating in real time.
In fabulous Austin, Texas.
This is collaboration, guys. You're witnessing it. It's amazing. So let's go ahead and get this started, and let's talk about Agile. Let's talk about Agile development. Now, look, reality, this is happening. All right. So a survey that TechBeacon did, 67% of the respondents said that they were either pure Agile or leaning towards it. So this is happening. All right. We all work in companies that are adopting Agile, consider themselves Agile, or moving toward it. And there's a lot of great reasons to do this. You know, one, it's kind of fun. All right. I mean, back in the day when I was doing waterfall, did not like it. But you actually get stuff out of it. I mean, you get stuff. Like here are some of the things from TechBeacon again, all the reasons, you know, why they're sticking with Agile. Collaboration, software quality, customer sat, time to market gets shortened, reduced cost of development. These are all good things. Ain't nobody going to argue against this stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, you guys do that at Dell Software.
Absolutely.
You guys are Agile.
Absolutely. We're doing that internally.
And so are we here at Datical. I mean, this works. This is how we get releases out quicker. And you know, look, you show this stuff to any executive, this is an easy sell. Hey, we want to change the way we do development. You show that executive this stuff, it's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when I think about the DevOps evolution, you know, it really, to me, it's an evolution of the Agile practices that were first pioneered, you know, what, 15, 16, 17 years ago. You know, and it was all around getting things out to market faster, taking a more pragmatic approach to software development, and that's really expanded and grown over the last, you know, almost 2 decades now, where now you've seen other processes like continuous integration, continuous delivery, and now, you know, DevOps are really becoming standard practices within organizations. And as that scope of collaboration expanded to you know, reach past that point of deployment out into operations and creating a fuller cycle of back and forth collaboration between the dev side and the ops side, you can see that the value has really increased as well. The value to the organization, as well as the value to the professionals that are working in that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I love this slide because it really breaks down, at least for me, you know, look, I just kind of intuitively believe that Agile has led to DevOps. That when you are an Agile shop, that you have adopted this, you are going to have a DevOps problem, you know. And I love how this kind of lays out that progression, and we've seen this. We've seen this at companies. They adopt Agile, they go to CI/CD, then they need to move into DevOps. And there's a reason to do this, all right? So this is from Puppet Labs. This is great, guys, because every year they put out a State of DevOps report. And so on the right, that's from, you know, the 2014. And it kind of showing the difference between high performers and low performers, people that have adopted DevOps and people who haven't. So if you'll notice that if you adopt DevOps, you're going to get faster, you know, deployments. Your deployment frequency, the number is actually going to increase, and the lead time is going to get better. That lead time is defined from the amount of time from code check-in to deployment to production. So if you are using DevOps, you are 200 times faster than the other folks. And I think what's really interesting here is those last two lines, the mean time to recover and the chance that a change success rate, okay? Notice that it is increased. And the reason why I'm putting this here is because I'm trying to make a point that the rich are getting richer, all right? If you have adopted DevOps, Agile and DevOps in your organization, then you are going to continue to reap benefits from it. And I think that's why we're all here today, okay? Right. We're all bought in, yeah. All right? We all work in places that have adopted Agile, that are looking at DevOps. And the thing that is, you know, kind of perplexing us is what about Agile and DevOps for the database? So what we're going to do is we're going to show a little video here. It's going to be kind of laggy, but I think the video, the audio is going to come across. So just bear with me for a sec.
All right, girls, now this is your last chance. If one piece of candy gets past you and into the packing room unwrapped, you're fired.
Yes, ma'am.
Let her roll!
Oh, this is easier. Yeah, we can handle this, okay? I think we're fighting a losing game.
Okay, and we are back. All right, so did everybody spot the DBA? Did everybody spot the database developer? You know, on the other side of that wall, that is Agile, that is DevOps. And, you know, that is the problem we're dealing with here, you know, and we really have to ask ourselves, how are we helping our database developers and DBAs as, you know, IT industry professionals, all right? What are we doing to bring in these folks into our organization to help them benefit, you know, just like we described all the great stuff with Agile and DevOps. So here is how we're helping. This is a picture of a database developer being invited to a sprint planning meeting in Dev.
All right. That's just rough.
And here we've got our DBA, you know, invited to a sprint conditioning, you know, meeting. And then here we've got a photo of a database professional and all the cool tools available to them to really help their life out.
Looks like you feel a little left out.
A little left out. A little left out. I hope everybody's getting the point here. I hope we're not being too heavy-handed. So, you know, Alan, let's go ahead and kick it off to that next that first poll question.
Great. Guys, before we do, I just want to give you mad props for having that Lucy clip in color. I didn't have a color TV when I used to watch that when I was younger, so it was always black and white for me. But, all right, here's our first poll question. So, guys, which photo best describes how database professionals are treated in an Agile? Is that the first question, Robert, or did I do this backwards? Okay.
Oh no, we want everybody to pick the right photo because we're going to start using that for all of our blogs.
Which one's
excellent.
Hey,
this is your chance, guys, audience, to actually pick something here. Which photo best describes how database professionals are treated in an Agile and DevOps world? Is it the excluded kid? Is it the lonely puppy? Or even lonelier kid? Even lonelier than the lonely puppy. So if we can take your choices, we'll lock this up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It was interesting. The excluded kid was off to a big start, and it stayed that way. Just under half went with the excluded kid. And you know
Okay.
what,
All
though?
right.
All kidding aside, I think that's it's the truth. It's,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, look, this is the problem that we're dealing with. Oh, I switched it off to the next slide. You know, when we talk about, you know, this exclusion and this loneliness, you know, that's what's going on, man. There's all sorts of great stuff, you know, for our you know, agile development folks. And this is the problem that we're dealing with, okay? Back in the day, it was great. When we got one release out a quarter, we wanted our database professionals to look at every single script. You know, we wanted them to be able to pore over it, you know, in their favorite text editor. And it was okay. But now that things have sped up on the release side, we are struggling. Our database developers and our DBAs are really struggling keeping up, and it is stopping us from realizing the benefit of Agile DevOps.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And where we want to get back to is really that last conveyor belt there where things start to flow freely again. And so I think my view on the database process, the database lifecycle, is that it's really kind of the bottleneck in an otherwise agile process. I mean, a lot of the rest of the business is you know, off to the races. They're moving quickly, but when we find that point where the database is going to support some of that application, the application change, things start to slow down, and the database really becomes kind of a bottleneck there. And I think that's just something that's kind of inherent in what databases are and what database development looks like. I mean, we've got we have to manage the state of this database, right?
Yes.
It's very different from a typical just, you know, front-end application in that sense. And we also have to preserve data throughout all of these different changes that we're making. And that, I mean, the DBA, your job, your role, the whole reason that you know, you are so important within those companies is because that data is the lifeblood of the company. So we absolutely cannot let that
For sure.
slip through, right? So that also means things like rolling back changes is difficult. So, you know, on the application side, the equation is a little bit different. You know, the way that I see it happening on the application side, if you will, is kind of the upper half of this little video here. You know, the application teams, the front end teams, Java.net guys, you know, they can check in their code, and then this whole series of automated processes follows right behind that, right? It moves straight into a build system, tests are run, all kinds of reviews and checks and balances are gone through. But, you know, when they need support from the database side of things, the database development lifecycle is just different, and it's harder to keep up with that because so much of it is just not automated in the same way that the application side is. So kind of back to that picture where the application teams have a lot of these tools that help them, and for a long time the database developer and DBA haven't.
Oh, and the worst thing is they have no idea what's going on with the database developers,
right,
or the DBAs. They just say, "Oh, well, I got my build done.
Just hurry up.
What's wrong with you?"
Right. So it increases pressure. I mean, you know, we see, you know, vanity stats out there like Amazon putting changes out like 23,000 times every day. I mean, that just blows the mind of anybody that's anywhere close to databases. That sort of pace is actually possible. And yet, when was the last time Amazon went down, right? Or you had some major problem with Amazon. So there are plenty of other examples like that. And so when we think about these examples, we think about, you know, automating things in general, but automating the database lifecycle. Why would we want to do that? And I think one of the things that's often overlooked is things like reducing risk, right? We know about speed. Automation can help us increase speed, but it can also help us to reduce risk and to lower costs as well.
Yep.
So, you know, I think sometimes we think that there's this trade-off between speed and quality or risk, and that's typically been the way it is. I don't know that it has to be that way anymore. So one of the things that we've done, and that you kind of talked to this already, Robert, is we slow things down, right? In order to avoid risk, we stretch things out a little bit. We get really methodical. We're very, very careful. We look through every single script. You know, we become very slow in our attempt to reduce the amount of risk that we're exposed to.
The one I hear a lot is go slow to go fast.
Right.
And I don't buy it.
Right, exactly. And the result of that is that the business is less responsive, right? So the business is looking for this ability to go faster so that they can respond to changes in the market. But if the database is that bottleneck there and we have to slow down in order to protect that lifeblood of our business, that doesn't work, right? There's a challenge there.
Well, for sure. I mean, I was talking at some folks about this problem, and one of the managers pulled me off to the side and said, is it normal to have a 5-month delay to run a script? And I wanted to give the guy a hug and just like,
right.
No, it's not normal. You don't deserve this. You don't. It gets better. It gets better. We're here to help.
Right.
Oh, it's so sad. So sad.
Right. Exactly. I mean, we've seen that all over the place. The other thing that I also see is things like cutting corners, right? As a way to avoid risk and speed up that process. We start cutting corners. That's kind of a natural thing that we do as we've run out of time. So, one of the first things to go is proper testing or unit testing at the level of the developer. So many of the developers I talk to, I feel for them as well in their challenge, the pressure that they're under to deliver these things faster and faster.
Yeah.
They can't take the time they need to do proper unit testing. So oftentimes I ask the developer, are you testing your code? Are you able to? Say, well, I debugged it and made sure that it was working and so on. And I applaud them for that because, that's definitely the first step. But what about creating unit tests and doing other things? We sort of talk out the side because we just don't have time for it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's I don't think that's a fair trade-off there. The other thing that we kind of cut corners for is best practices, right? Everybody likes to put air quotes around best practices. I kind of did the same thing there.
Yeah.
Because it's a nice idea, right? But nobody's got the time for it. And as this pace increases, there's even less time. And so we throw these things out the window, or things like domain best practices, coding best practices. If you're an Oracle professional, you know that there's a certain way that you need to write that code. And as a DBA, you get pulled into these code review meetings, and you don't have time for that, right? So things just start getting more and more compressed. Things become harder and harder to do. You start to cut those corners. And so, you find, as management, you find yourself in the position of being kind of policeman. DBAs are getting pulled into these things. We don't have time. So it's not something we can really cut and safely, right?
Exactly. I mean, look, and if I wanted to be a cop, I'd be a cop. I don't want to have to run around and police this stuff. It's just no reason for that. That's just lame. And the challenges get even worse. We start, like when these scripts get done, because there's so much pressure on that database developer to get them out, we just kick them over to our DBAs and say, oh, here you go. And so they have this opaque, very difficult to understand script, and it's binary. It's success, or failure, and we don't know until we run it, and we're okay with that. The house is on fire, and we're okay because we just have to deal with it, and it's so complicated, so difficult, and it's very few people understand these challenges and the impact on the business. Now, for those of you that might be familiar with this meme, you know that this is not the correct text that I should have on this, but this is a family-friendly webinar. But the point is that we're, these DBAs, they have no automation, all right, no orchestration. It is a person. Every other, DevOps orchestration tool that says, hey, go call the DBA for a manual push, and then when it's done, press go. And even if we were to put our scripts, these SQL scripts, into a Puppet, a Chef, an Urban Code Deploy, something like that, I heard this amazing line from one of our customers, and it was, DevOps orchestration allowed me to break my database far faster than I was previously with just running the scripts manually. Not a good model. Not a good model. It's just, it gets bad. And finally, look, it's, like the frog that's in the pot, the pot of water gets hotter and hotter and eventually boils and kills the frog. If you immediately put a frog in boiling water, it's going to jump out, all right?
Yeah.
But if you heat it up slowly but surely, a frog's going to die. They get used to it. And that's what we're dealing with. We have dealt with this challenge for so long as you know, database professionals or database developers, database administrators. Our lives have gotten progressively worse and worse. And the risk has increased, and the time and money has increased so slowly that we're just accepting it, and we think that's wrong. Absolutely.
Yeah,
wrong.
no, I completely agree. I mean, we've seen that with our customers too. I mean, fast by definition is kind of relative, right? And so I've seen with some of my customers as well in their development life cycle, they talk to me about how they're going fast and they're under pressure to go even faster. And they give me examples of how they're currently going fast, and you know, they're high-fiving and I high-five them right back because I know how difficult it is to do this in their environment with the tools that they've got. But you know, they're talking about doing releases every 2 weeks, but they've actually got multiple release trains and they've staggered them. So it's actually a 4-week release train for those changes, right? And so these guys are running as fast as they can, and yet the fastest that they can comfortably get something out, and I use that word liberally there, of course, get things out is between 2 and 4 weeks. And that's just, they're running ragged. They're trying to build their team a little bit bigger. They're trying to implement some of these things, and they're getting faster as a result. But it's just something that they become accustomed to, so that they think, well, 2 weeks, that is fast, right? No, I think we've kind of been boiling the frog there a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why we're here together today. That's why I'm here in beautiful, to talk about what Datical can do in conjunction with what Toad can do. And really the two of them, I think, start to close that gap and fill in that last piece of the puzzle for DevOps, right? So, we no longer have to make a tough choice between speed and risk. We can actually begin to go faster, but do it the right way. And things that we start to see the benefits of that, right? We still get the shorter development cycles, but we're also reducing risk. We're ensuring quality. I'm going to argue we might even be increasing quality as a result, really.
For sure.
And we're lowering cost overall. And I'll talk in a minute about kind of how that works. So I'm going to kind of, actually Robert and I are going to kind of walk through these 5 pieces here. And this seems a bit simplistic at the surface, but when you really get into what does it take to actually implement this in a development team and with the DBAs as we're getting things out to market, now this is where things like Toad and Datical can really come to play and provide something very unique. So let's start by taking a look at that first one, tracking code changes. It's absolutely critical that we track our code changes properly. A lot of times the developers and DBAs I work with really only focus on having those changes tracked in a database. I mean, the database is often referred to as the master version of the truth, and production database certainly deserves that. But having your code artifacts represented in a version control system and managed there provides really the foundation for starting to speed things up.
Absolutely.
You get better visibility, right? You know that you've got the right version of the code on its way into the build system. You've got you know that you've got integrity of that code object as well, and now you can work more collaboratively, because that's not a hard word, with everyone else on your team, right? If you're working in a live environment, you're constantly worried about stepping on each other's toes. Someone made changes you weren't aware about. You went in to make more changes. Now you've just undone something. Putting things into a version control system make a lot of sense. I mean, they're been around for a long time. They're very popular for a reason.
Yeah.
So using that in the database environment is really the foundation for starting to go faster. And we make that easy inside of Toad, right? We built that straight into Toad. We work with all of the major version control providers. But we can also, by using it inside of that IDE there, we can also help to improve the standards. So some of the next pieces that we'll talk about are actually reinforced by this process of checking code in and checking code out through Toad. And so people can start to work together more collaboratively. They can be a little bit faster. And it really sets the stage, I think, for what's next in the next part of the process. That next part then is really unit testing. And some people kind of roll their eyes when we talk about unit testing because it's one of those corners that we're so used to cutting, right? We know that it's a good thing to do, but it's one of those things that you have to put time in order to get the benefit. And so
it's like going to the gym.
Don't remind me, please. Seriously, don't remind me.
I know I should do it. I know I should do it.
Right, right. But you don't. And then when you don't, it bites you later, right? You know, that 5 pounds turns to 10, 10 to 20, and so on. So, you know, one of the things that we're trying to do with Toad, and I use trying liberally there as well because we are doing it, is we're actually making that process of creating those unit tests very simple, right? So we're taking the pain out of this idea of unit testing for the developer, and we're helping the developer to very easily move from debugging into actually creating unit tests. In fact, in our recent release, we actually used debugging as the first step of creating a new unit test. So you can actually debug as you normally would, and then why not save that information that you use in your debug session as a new unit test? And then that can go into a repository, and now you've got a repository, this virtuous cycle, if you will, of a growing repository that you can run all of your changes through, and as you start to build out that pipeline. And that's really what we're talking about, right, Robert, is how can we build a pipeline, a deployment pipeline for all of our database artifacts. So, you know, the Toad solution provides something that's not only intuitive and fast, but it's persistent. It goes straight into your version control system. So now you're following another best practice of keeping your code and your tests together. But we also give you the ability to integrate that into some of the other CI tools like Jenkins as well.
So you've got no excuse now.
Exactly. Exactly. And let me give you one more reason, just while we're talking about it, of why we want to automate this testing. Professor Barry Boehm's been talking about this for, frankly, probably as long as I've been alive, about how, you know, the cost of finding and fixing bugs closer to production really ramps up exponentially, right? If we can fix something in design, it doesn't cost us any, right? It's just the back of a napkin. But once we get into development, it starts to cost us something to fix these things.
Absolutely.
And then testing is even more, and staging, you know, even double that of testing. By the time you get out into production, everyone knows it's very, very costly. But sometimes in our hurry to get things out, we slow things down by inadvertently by just passing the buck onto that testing group, just expecting they're going to take things from that point of debugging. But even there, it can cost a lot more money. So what we're talking about is, you know, building a repository of tests that you can use to really eliminate a lot of that rework and kind of move things from that right-hand side to the left-hand side. And that's where we start to get into really saving costs. The third part here is automating the code reviews. And again, it's one of those things that we cut a corner around because we just don't have time. So instead of cutting the corner, why don't we actually automate that? And so, you know, this concept in the application development side of the world of static testing of the code is not something that we've seen for a while in the database world, and that's where Toad can bring unique value.
Oh yeah, we got all sorts of cool stuff for Java and every other language, but we're definitely lacking.
Exactly. So if you're used to those kinds of tools, those kinds of processes, this is what we're talking about here inside of Toad as well, is that we provide that static test of your code to run through the code from top to bottom, evaluate it against a set of over 200 different rules that are rules that we didn't just come up with in some ivory tower somewhere. These are things coming straight out of the best-selling books, coming in from the database professionals that are out speaking at conferences and writing those books as well. We're putting that into the software and then giving you a nice reporting structure around that, so you can actually do those code reviews and get kind of that best practice while you're developing. In fact, that's one of the unique things about how we've actually done this, is it's not a separate step. We actually can do this code review while you're writing the code, kind of like your syntax check. You can go in and see what's going on with the code as you're developing it, and then when you check that code in, this is one of those gates. The code has to pass through this test, meet certain thresholds before it can go on, and so we're really reinforcing quality in a couple of different ways without slowing things down.
So, and at that point, you're ready to check in your database changes, your SQL scripts, into source code control, and of course what happens next is the build. Some kind of release is created. So let's go ahead and have poll question number 2, Alan.
Excuse me. Absolutely, guys. Let's jump on it. So question number 2. What build server is your organization using? and we're asking you to select one of the following if you know. Bamboo, Jenkins, Team Foundation Server, something not mentioned, or frankly, I don't have a clue. And if you can put your answers in, we don't want to waste too much time. We'll close this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you know, guys, this pretty much sees what I see in the market as well. You know, Jenkins.
Oh, poor Atlassian, poor Microsoft.
Yeah, we'll feel bad for them, but just a great community over at the Jenkins community.
Well, yeah, it's look, we've got integrations with all this stuff. I know that Toad works with all this stuff too, but
right,
you can't beat the price on Jenkins, man. You just really can't.
Yeah, and it's rock solid.
And also KK, their founder, he's a really cool dude. I don't know if you have an opportunity to see one of his presentations. The founder of Jenkins, very tall, very deep voice. Great guy to watch. Great guy.
Yeah,
so let's talk about.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. We'll move on.
Oh yeah. We'll move on to the next one. So we were talking about, certainly, those first 3 steps, and where Datical picks up is after that build server. Okay. Once that's. Oh, Alan, can you go ahead and?
Yes, Robert. I'm sorry. I think you want the next poll question.
No. Oh no, we're gonna.
Your slides. Okay.
We got it, man. Thank you.
Got him. Okay, good.
So once you've done that, once you have, you've checked in your database, proposed database changes into source code control. Once you have, done your unit tests, we created your unit tests. Once you have automated your code reviews and that static code analysis, at this point, it's ready to go. And that is where Datical takes over from Toad. And, we could hand these scripts off to a DBA, but what we can do over at Datical is we can consume these scripts and automate the staging of them, all right, getting them ready to push out. And the 2 things that we're doing there is, one is we are doing what we call a forecast. We're going to take these scripts and push them to a proposed environment, but we're not going to make changes to that database. What we're going to do is play what if. We're going to see what those proposed changes are going to do. Now, it could be we're updating a stored procedure, and we've got high level of confidence because we've done static code analysis, we have unit tests with Toad, and we might be adding a column, and then we're going to go ahead and drop a trigger. What? Drop it? No, we're not dropping anything, all right? And one of the things we can do is see in that that forecast, and that's what you're seeing to the right. You're seeing a HTML report that's generated and shows you that there are things that are going to happen here. Oh, we're dropping this function, Oh no, we can't do that. But that still requires, human to look at that HTML report. We also have a rules engine. So much like the Toad static code analysis, we have a rule engine to enforce your corporate technical and regulatory standards. You might have a standard at your company that says, we don't drop in production. You rename it, do whatever you want, we ain't dropping, all right? Or you could have something that says every change must have a comment, must be associated with some Jira ticket or ServiceNow ticket or whatever. Mm-hmm. You could also have one to enforce naming conventions, right? I know, a lot of my DBA brethren, they are constantly fighting against everybody, coming up with their own naming convention. And we could do something inside Datical DB where, let's say if you have a column that ends in _FLG, it's a flag, and it's going to be a car data type size 1, all right? So there's no confusion there. That's really powerful because what that's going to do is, one, it helps you find issues earlier. When you have this checked, this part of Jenkins, part of your build server, what Datical can actually do is fail the build if you violate some of these rules, if you kind of step out of line of what are the policy our production team established, all right? And that goes back to what, Daniel, you were saying about the cost of fixing bugs.
Right.
Far cheaper to find them and fix them in depth. So let's not wait until 3 a.m. on a Monday morning. We've been up all weekend waiting on this release to finally look at the scripts, you know, before we accept them. No, let's do this in depth. We're going to find issues early. We're going to fit into our existing process. And that's, you know, what Daniel was talking about, that's checking into source code control. We want these database changes to be part of the application release process that you've already established that's working.
Exactly.
We want to shorten and amplify that feedback loop. We want to move quickly, but not at the cost of safety. We can do both. We can move fast and safe. And this reminds me of that triangle. You know, we've all done this in meetings, right? Good, fast, cheap. Pick two. We don't think that's the case anymore. We think you can get all three. And I just saw the question, audience question. That's funny. Everybody see that? That's funny. Let's move on to that fifth step there and talk about how we're going to automate that deployment stuff. So once you've automated the staging of it, you feel good. Now you can put it into your existing DevOps orchestration process. And that is where you really, man, you really drop the pedal. You know, this is where you can move at light speed just as quickly as the application folks. And that's crazy to think about that. That you're moving as fast as these guys that can just delete the application and push out a new one. Insane, all right? But with this infrastructure, you can validate, deploy, roll back your changes. You find issues quickly, and you eliminate human error, all right? Look, guys, there's a reason why we got into IT. We like computers. We like solving problems, all right? And we didn't get into this industry so that we can just answer tickets.
Right.
That's not why we're here, all right? And so by eliminating that human touch, we can move into an advise and consent role. We can see those proposed changes before they're pushed out or before the push happens, and we can say yay or nay.
That's huge.
And you know, and being able to figure it out, the auditing at the end, who changed what, when, and where. And what we're proposing here, I think, is this combination with you know, Dell Software Toad and Datical DB, is that, you know, we all heard MTTR, mean time to resolution. Well, what we're proposing is that you want to get MTTI, mean time to innocence. You want to be able to get to a point where something goes wrong with the deployment. They quit looking at the database professionals. They quit looking at our database developers. They quit looking at our DBAs and say, oh, well, it's a database. It's a database. You guys go off into your area and figure it out.
Why is that always where they start, right?
Because it's hard, it's opaque, it's difficult, it's easy, and then they go to lunch and they just wait for our database developers and DBAs to prove that they didn't do anything wrong. It's like proving that aliens don't exist. You're proving a negative. It's horrible, awful situation to be in. And so now with these two solutions, you can say, no, check it out. There's my static code analysis from Toad. Here is the code review I did in the unit test. Here's my report from Datical. Bro, talk to somebody else, man. This is not my problem. Mean time to innocence, MTTI, not my fault. Not me, somebody else. Look elsewhere. I'm going to lunch now.
Absolutely.
So let's go to this third and final poll question here.
Fantastic, guys. Okay, our next question is, what DevOps orchestration platform is your organization using? Chef, Puppet, Urban Code Deploy by IBM, another one not mentioned, or again, I don't know, or I guess one of the questions should have been is we're not using any, but or perhaps one of the answers. But anyway, We're going to give you another 5 seconds to knock this one down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So a mixed bag of responses here, guys. I would have thought Chef and Puppet might have come out a little higher, but Urban Code Deploy was the single biggest choice, but other actually was, probably had a multitude of ones in there. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and I don't know leading the pack, right?
Exactly.
Fully over a third of I don't know.
Exactly. I mean, that just reinforces this concept that the database professional is the redheaded stepchild, right? And that goes back to the fantastic question earlier. Is that the why don't you know is probably because you're not part of that, part of all that. Can you go ahead and remove the poll for us? You've been left out in the cold, right? You're the database professional is the redheaded stepchild there, or the process of what we do in database development and administration is.
Yeah, and it's just forgotten, and it gets to it goes back to that whole ticket-driven concept that we're just going to call somebody to figure it out, and we don't care how they do it.
Yeah, that's fine as long as you're not that someone that gets called.
Hey, Alan, can you go ahead and close that poll?
Sure. I actually. Oh, done.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's just unacceptable, inexcusable. It is, this is not the fault of our database developers. This is not the fault of our DBAs.
No.
This is management, folks. And I got to tell you, it is. We got to fix this problem. We got to get ahead of this, because if not, everything's going to come to a grinding, screeching halt.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, this is why we're here today. Is we wanted to kind of point out, how the the combined solution of Toad and Datical can really be that missing piece of the puzzle in an otherwise agile pipeline, right? Release and deployment pipeline. So just looking again at kind of what we're talking about here, starting with tracking those changes, being able to automate the testing and automate the code review so that we're not cutting any of those corners, and then picking up all of that good work that was done and cleaned and reviewed and properly tested from the development team, and moving that quickly and easily into the staging environment, being able to do the what if and see what's going to, or how that is going to impact your environment, and then move that out to deployment. Things start to get a whole lot faster, right? So we start to see, we're happier as database professionals, but the business starts to see that benefit that we were talking about earlier as well, of just being able to be more responsive in the marketplace, respond to customers, keep going fast, and no more redheaded stepchild, right?
Absolutely.
So, next slide.
Sorry. I was looking at the questions. I'm thinking about the run, not the catch. Sorry, Daniel.
Right. So when we look at that, and as a in its entirety, right? When we start to figure out how we can plug that hole or fit that last piece of the puzzle in there, it really means that we're going to be, I think, better people, right? We're not staying up till 3 a.m. managing these
Yeah, man. I got time for that.
I don't know how they do it, man. But the things start to move faster. We start to save money. I mean, we've seen from some of our customers. I've got a customer in transportation industry out in Seattle that has seen 8 figures kind of ROI out of implementing some of the Toad solutions. Figures like 30% more productive staff, which to me just says I've got more time to focus on all of the cool and interesting projects that I kind of got into IT for in the first place.
Yes.
I've got time to go home to my family at the end of the day, et cetera, right? And we start to look good as database professionals in, we're no longer that redheaded stepchild.
Yeah.
We can deliver real value to this organization in a very different equation from just, don't break stuff and make sure you don't lose my data.
Yeah,
right?
Don't screw it up. Yeah,
exactly.
Look, this is frankly, this is unacceptable, because it is this the only time that our database developers and DBAs get any attention is when bad stuff is going down, and that's that cannot continue. And what we've seen in because of that situation, that they only get noticed when bad things happen. They are not provided the opportunity to avoid the bad things. And so we have seen at customer sites that companies that are using Toad, that are using Datical, we've seen them be able to accelerate database projects far faster than they previously thought.
Yeah.
So one of our customers was a little bit behind on patching Oracle. Now look, Oracle is not putting these patches out for fun.
Sure. Right.
Hey guys, this changes the logo to cornflower blue. I mean, that's not what it's doing. All right. What it's doing is either data integrity or data security, and I think everybody on this call would agree with both of them. Yeah, both those are good things. And they were behind on their patches, and they were able to catch up. All right, simple stuff like that. They're also, you know, we have also seen companies that use these solutions together are 3 times more effective than other teams in the same company, dealing with the same servers. All right, so DBAs and database developers that are supporting a dev team that's pushing to a server, and you'll have another team that's solutions 3 times more effective. All right, and what that means is that huge list that you're looking at. The reason why you have 12,000 emails in your inbox right now, and 8,000 of them are unread. You have a long list, and it's time for you to get to that, and we can help you do that. So at this point, let's go ahead and open it up for some questions, and I think there's quite a few here. I think the first one is for you. I'm going to go ahead and read it off. It is there a particular edition of Toad that supports the workflow you're discussing here?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, you know, most of what we were talking about there is actually part of the expert edition. But the expert edition of Toad is probably just a good starting point. There's another edition called the development suite, which builds on top of that, things we didn't have time to get into. But the expert edition is a great place to start. It adds in the capabilities that we talked about there, but also adds in SQL optimization, which was something we didn't even get to. But you know, sometimes we don't think about that being a developer's you know, task to do optimization. But I mean, developers are human just like the rest of us, right? You don't want to look bad. So if that code is running slowly in production or on its way out towards production, where does it go? It goes back to me, right, if I wrote it. So one of the things that's in that expert edition too is this very quick and easy, just make it better type of SQL optimization, the 80% side of 80-20 rule. Great question.
And let's Jules, I'm gonna keep answering these, and we'll see if we get any more. Folks, go ahead, and if you have a question, go ahead and go to the QA window there. You could also put it in chat and ask questions. So you want to go ahead and can you read number 2?
Right. So what happens if some of the developers in my company aren't using the solutions? How do I manage conflicting changes? Yeah, you know, I think that's actually one of the challenges is that, you know, when we think about things like tracking code changes, it's great if everybody's doing it, but we know that databases and scripting and so on being what they are, there are sometimes changes that are being made by folks that maybe don't have some of these solutions. How do we manage that? From the Toad side, it's actually really simple. In fact, in the upcoming release of the 2016 edition, comes out in June, we've updated that team coding area where we're doing that version control integration to support better merging of code changes. So as you as a developer are working on the code change, you should see somebody's been in here mucking around. It's different from what was in my VCS. Right? You can easily compare those and now merge them together, so you can handle those. Exactly.
Yeah, I think you know, look, we all work at large companies. And so there are going to be early adopters. There's going to be people that lag behind. And look, not everybody's going to be doing it. But if you are having success, if you have one team of database developers and DBAs that are staying late and the other is leaving on time, I guarantee you the people that are staying late are going to say, what are they doing and how can I get some? So we've seen these solutions go through and are adopted in smaller groups, and they spread because people talk. People want to get home on time.
Mm-hmm.
We got a question here. Is Bamboo supported for CI? Yes. We were limited to the number of answers on that question. So insert your favorite build server, insert your favorite DevOps solution, and Toad and Datical DB supports them both.
Good questions.
Okay, we've got one. Does Datical support deployment of DB2 COBOL programs, custom scripts for Z? Not today, but we are certainly looking at expanding support. We support Oracle DB2, SQL Server. We are looking to expand support to DB2 on Z, working with IBM on that. More to come. I guarantee you, though, that you have more databases than DB2 on Z.
Absolutely.
And so we can certainly help you out with that. Today, and then in a few, a small amount of time, help you out on the Z side, because we are definitely moving into that space.
Daniel, if I may, it's Alan. There's actually quite a few questions asking about what Datical supports or not supported. Can I go through them quick with you? Give us a yes, no, down in the pipeline, look for it or not at this time, right?
Are they Datical questions or Toad questions or a mix?
Could be a mix. One is, I assume you also support Git as well.
Oh, absolutely. Look, both solutions,
Yep.
Look, we're dealing with SQL scripts.
Right.
And this is text. We can check that into any source code control system.
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
so for the Toad, we added that maybe 2 years ago too. I mean, it's been in there for a little while. We have great support.
Yeah, Git's big. What about SQL Developer?
Yeah,
Integrate with SQL Developer?
Not quite sure what you mean great with SQL Developer. I mean, so if you're talking about the SQL Developer I'm thinking of, that would actually be another type of IDE similar to Toad, and it can do things like check in and check out. Although I'm going to argue it's not as good. But
It stinks, Alan. It's terrible. I'm
I
going to
didn't
say it
say
for
you did.
Daniel.
Try to be nice. Try to be nice.
All right, we'll move along. We'll move along. Where does that? Hold on.
I'll finish that one and just say that that's really just a starting point. There's so much more that comes behind that it's not available in anything except for Toad. All of the testing that we're talking about, all of the static code analysis we're talking about, the aspects of collaboration, even the optimization we talked about briefly. I mean, all of those things are things that we add to that basic IDE type of experience that goes well beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Hey, Robert, this is a Datical one. Datical integrates with Jenkins. I think I can answer that, but I'll let you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yes. It's really
Okay.
good.
I think
And I'll add, Toad is adding additional capability for Jenkins in the upcoming 2016 release in June as well.
Yeah.
So we already do have support for it. We're broadening that. You can learn more about that in the weeks to come as we get ready for that release.
Yeah, absolutely. We eat our own cooking. That's what we use.
Excellent. Next, this is another Datical question. How can I ship the DB build outside of the organization? Do we need Datical to deploy?
Well, we would prefer that you absolutely use Datical for deployments, because what we're going to do is track the state. Remember, that's the big challenge with databases, right? Keeping track of the state. What version is that database schema at? And that's what we're going to track. And so we think that is a far superior solution to anything that you've got right now.
Okay.
So yeah, we definitely want you to do the deployments with Datical, and but prior to that, we show you the forecasts and also the SQL scripts we're going to run. So the DBAs can look at this stuff. We're not hiding anything. It's not an opaque black box.
Yep. Guys, we have some really deep questions that at the top of the hour here we're not going to have time to answer live, but I'd like to make sure you get the written
Oh yeah,
questions
and we'll
to respond to.
for sure. We'll reach back out to whoever asked those. We will answer them because
Great.
look,
there are some questions that are going to. Yeah, they're going to take some time. Let me give you what I think is probably a quicker one. What is the recommended version control tool for DB?
Oh man, see that's the thing. It's what you got.
Yeah.
I mean that is the answer. Whatever you're using in your organization, even if it's ClearCase, bless your heart.
Yeah.
We support it, and you should use that, and then move to Git.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I imagine that the application side of the house or some other part of the business that you're working with has already got something there. So that'd be a good place to start if you haven't already.
Got it. I have another question, and I think I know the answer to this one's going to depend. How much time do I need to install and configure Datical?
This is quick, and it's getting even quicker. We get customers up and running, even educating them in a day, and they're off to the races. It's more of hand-holding and show you how to do it, and then it's done. It's real easy.
Got it. Guys, I wish we had...
challenge, Alan, I'm sorry, but we would love the opportunity to prove it to you.
Yep.
I would love to be somebody to call me on that and to prove that I'm that I'm right.
And maybe we can. Guys, I'd love to get to the rest of these questions because there's probably a half a dozen to a dozen here, and some of them, as I said, are rather complex. But we're at the top of the hour. We need to be mindful of people's time as well as your time. Both of you, this was one of the most lively, engaging webinars I think we've done in a long time here on DevOps.com. So thanks for a great job, great webinar. I'm sure our audience approved of it and got a lot out of it. It was a fantastic webinar. Until next time, though, we're going to call it a day on this one. Again, thanks to Dell Software and Datical for sponsoring today's webinar. Thank you for attending. This is Alan Schimmel of DevOps.com, and we'll see you soon on another webinar. Bye-bye.